In this video, I'll teach you some very fundamental features such as 3D in Framer, sticky positioning, and scroll transforms that allow us to create almost any 3D scroll animation in Framer without writing a single line of code and just by drawing rectangles on a design canvas. It is going to be a fun video because we are building this crazy 3D text scroll animation from scratch as an exercise. I'm sharing these in-depth Framer tutorials for completely free, so please support me by subscribing, liking, writing a comment, and even by sharing this video with your Framer friends. So without any further ado, let me introduce myself. My name is Nandi. This is Framer University, and let's get started. I'm going to break this video up into 4 sections. In the first section, we're going to analyze the animation and figure out how we can recreate it. Then in the second section, we are going to take a look at 3D transforms and how we can use them as our base for this 3D animation. In the third section, we are going to master sticky positioning, and in the last section, we're going to actually execute the animation that everyone is waiting for, but it is really important that you cannot just skip to the last part. You gotta watch the full video from start to finish to get the full picture. So let's start by jumping into the first section and taking a look at our animation. Before we go ahead and actually analyze the scroll animation that we're about to create, I want to give a quick shout out to DSpooner because I first saw this little animation on his Twitter account. So yeah, quick shout out to DSpooner. So now if you take a look at this Framer website, you can see that this is the effect that we're going to be creating. And I think the first thing when we are analyzing this animation, the first thing that I want to cover is that this is an illusion. This is not real. We've been scammed. It's not a real staircase. It's basically just 3 frames positioned in a way that it gives us this illusion that this text is going through this staircase. In fact, we have these text layers multiple times on this page. I'm going to give you a little hint because maybe you can understand a little bit better if we take a look at this right here. So you can see that they are positioned in like weird 3D transformed way. So we get that 3D staircase look. And the crazy thing is that each of these rectangles that you see highlighted with this blue border, each of these frames have all of the text layers. So for example, we have naming right here. This naming is also within this top and within this bottom frame. And if I go to this other website, you're gonna also see a little bit more. This is what is basically happening in the background. This middle frame is moving the text layers within itself to the top and to the bottom as we scroll on the site. And then we have this top and this bottom frame as well, and they are moving horizontally. So if we take a look at this one right here, you can see that this is how it looks if we actually show the text layers that, shouldn't be visible. Basically, if we time these movements right, so if I zoom in here just a little bit, you're gonna see that on this middle frame, the S is going to the top, and then on this top frame, the horizontal movement or to this left-right movement is also coming in. The star strategy text layer is coming in on this frame as well, and it is going out on the center frame. So it just creates this illusion of this text going through this 3D staircase. So yeah, that's about the animation. So whenever we are creating any type of animation in Framer, we first always have to analyze what is going on. You could just say that, what is this? Like you bend the frame somehow and like these text layers are just like moving along or what? No, it's an illusion almost every single time. So yeah, now it's just about coming up with the right structure inside of Framer and knowing how to set these up, but that's why we're gonna learn 3D transforms in the next section of this video. So as you can see, here we are right inside of Framer. In an almost empty project, but we still have a little like starter page here. You can see that within this desktop breakpoint, we have this main stack. And if you place elements within that, those are going to be relatively positioned and centered inside of the main stack. But I'm giving you this starter file, so make sure to go down to the description, remix it, and you're gonna have everything that you need, and you can just follow along with me. You're gonna find this pages panel on the left, and just click the starter page and you're going to see what I'm saying right here. So yeah, let's just start setting up this 3D transform setup. So I think we should start by creating all the text layers that we will need inside of this animation. I actually don't remember what I had, so let's just take a look. So branding, I'm gonna just press T on my keyboard and then click here, write branding. Then I'm gonna select this text, change the color to blue. What is white? This is white, this is not blue. Okay, something is wrong with me, but hopefully for the rest of the video I'm gonna be able to tell the correct colors for these text layers. So I'm gonna make it a little bit bigger, 180 maybe, and then decrease the letter spacing and also make it a little bit more bolder, maybe semi-bold. I'm not actually sure what we used there. Maybe bold can also work. Yeah, I think it looks great, but maybe I just want to use semi-bold instead. Great, so now the line height will also be decreased just to make sure that this frame of the text layer is actually a little bit smaller. So by adjusting this line height, you're going to see that this frame is getting smaller and smaller. And we kind of want to have it around maybe 75 so that they almost touch the top of the letters. Yes, I think this will work just fine. And yeah, this is going to be the first text layer. And then I'm just going to simply press Command and D on my keyboard, and I'm going to just write the rest of the text layers here. The last one is going to be website. You can see that now we have this bunch of text layers. They're taking up a bunch of space from the website, but thankfully I'm on a larger monitor, so I can actually see all of them right here. So what I'm going to do with these is I'm going to wrap them in a stack. So I'm just selecting all of them, pressing Option, Command and Enter on my keyboard. This wraps them in a stack, so you can now see on the layers panel that the branding, naming, strategy, packaging, 3D visuals, and website text layers are all wrapped within this stack. This is going to be now their parent frame. So let's rename this to text layers. And what I'm also going to do is I'm going to change the gap here to 0 pixels so we don't have any gap between these text layers. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to wrap these text layers in another stack, and then I'm going to make sure that within that we only see one text layer. So the way I do that is I again press Option, Command and Enter. This wraps it in another stack. Let's call this step. And then this step will be having a fixed height instead of fit. So let's change it to fixed, and I'm just changing this height. And you can see that now this is how I can change how much I want to show from these text layers. However, now that I'm changing the height of this stack, this text layers frame within is trying to be centered all the time. But what I want to have is I want to have the first text layer, so the branding, right on top of this step stack. So the way I can do that is I can select the step stack and go to the right panel, change the direction to vertical, and then distribute to start. So now you can see that the layer within this step stack, the text layers, will start at the top of the step frame. So now I can just simply make this a little bit smaller, making sure that we only see one text layer here. What I can also do to make this a little bit more accurate is I can go and take a look at this branding text layer. I can check the height by switching it to fixed, and then I can see that it's 135, and then I can set it back to fit content. So now I can know that the step frame needs to be 135 as well, but it was 136, so it was very close. There's one more thing though. You can see that these text layers are aligned to the left. So the way we can make sure that these text layers are left aligned is really simple. First of all, I just want to make sure that we can see all the text layers, so we can see that they're going to be actually left aligned. I'm going to change this step frame that we created to only show this one text layer. And on the right panel, we can select the overflow and change it to visible. So now the overflowing parts are nicely visible. We're going to switch it back to hidden, but let's just select the text layers within, and then this will be left aligned. So now all of these layers within are also nicely left aligned. Then what I can do is I can switch the text layers to fit content if it's not already fit content, and then this step as well to fit content width, just to make sure that these frames are fitting the width of the text layers. So now I can select again the step, and then on the right I can change the overflow to hidden. So now we nicely see only one text layer. If we take a look at the design right here that we are recreating, we can see that we have 3 of these steps. This one right here on the top, here in the middle, and then on the bottom as well. So let's just duplicate these steps, and now we have 3. So I'm going to just call this step 1, step 2, step 3. Okay, so far so good. Now I'm going to wrap all of these steps, so step 1, 2, and 3, in another stack. So Option Command and Enter. I'm going to set that to fit width and fit height, and then the gap to 0, so we don't have any space between these. And then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to rename it to steps. So it is wrapping all the steps, and then this is going to be the layer where we implement the first 3D transform, because I kind of want to move it like this. I want to rotate it along the Y axis to look at this whole scene a little bit from the left. So I can do it really easily. In Framer, you can literally project any layer in 3D space by just going to the right panel after selecting a layer, in this case the steps. And then here we have the transforms section. We can click that, and then we are going to find the rotate. We're going to click 3D, and then we simply rotate it along the Y axis. And yeah, it looks really nice. Maybe we can also rotate it a little bit along the X axis, so we get something that is a little bit closer to this one. And yeah, we can tweak this a little bit later. Now what we're gonna do is we are going to actually transform the step layers within, so step 1, 2, and 3. So we get this nice staircase. Oh, and just before turning this into a staircase by adding some 3D transforms to the steps as well, I forgot one thing, which is making sure that these text layers are not the same. So right here, it's branding, branding, branding. Here it's branding, naming, and strategy. So how can we make sure that on each step we see the next text layer in order? We have to go inside of these step stacks, and then we are going to select each of these text layers, but one at a time. So first of all, the top one can stay branding. So I'm going to go inside of the step 2, and I'm going to select the text layer. And on the right panel, I have this padding property. If I click this little button, I can set paddings for individual sides separately. And if we add a bottom padding to this layer, we should be seeing a little movement here, but we're not really seeing that. It's because we have to make sure that it's set up correctly. We have to select the step, which is its parent right here. And here, the distribute should be set to center. So now this text layer is trying to get centered within its parent, which is the step 2. And if I now add some padding on the bottom or on the top, I can make sure that somehow I get the naming text layer in the view. So maybe I will have to add some top padding. Yes, and that's how I can push it down a little bit. So now I just have to fine tune this padding value on the top, so we position this naming correctly into the view. I think it's gonna be 405 in our case, but if you are working with different text sizes, it's probably going to be a little bit different for you. Just make sure that you get the second text layer in the order right here in the second step. So now we do the same setup on the third step. So first of all, we set the step 3 to distribute center, and then within the text layers can get a little top padding. And I think the next one is going to be strategy. So let's position it like this. Let's make sure that these are not peaking, for example, here. So I have to push it down a little bit more. And yeah, now it is perfect. We see the correct text layers. And now we can actually take a look at these steps and add some 3D transforms to them to make this kind of staircase look. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of identify the effects I want to add. So if you take a look at the center one, we can definitely say that that is going to be staying like how it is right now. We don't have to add any 3D transform to it because it is vertical and it should be vertical. However, we kind of have to lay the top one and the bottom one down. So the way we are going to do that is we're going to transform them along the x-axis. So I'm selecting step 1, going to the right panel, transform, rotate 3D X, and you can see that as I start rotating this, it starts rotating, but we see a little bit different effect compared to this one. The reason for this is because we have forgot to add one really important property. So when we are creating these 3D spaces inside the framer, for example, right now we are wrapping all of these steps in the steps frame, and we want to have all of these steps within the same 3D space. As you can see, these are kind of like creating a 3D environment, and to achieve that, what we need to do is we need to add preserve 3D style to the wrapping text layer. So again, these steps need to be in the same 3D environment. In order to achieve that, their parent, which is the steps, need to have the preserve 3D set to yes. And now as you can see, we get a much different effect. If I toggle this, you see that now everything that is within these steps is in the same 3D space. So as I'm changing this X rotation, I'm probably gonna set it to -90. We are getting something like this. However, the only issue is that it is getting a little bit further away from this second text layer, the naming. There is some gap between these two. The reason is because this is now being transformed from this center line of the text layer. So if I start like rotating it around, you can see kind of that center line that runs through the text layer. This is the origin point of the effect. So let's say we can change this origin point of the transform. What do you think where the origin point should be for this transform on the top? If you pay close attention, you can see that if the origin point is somewhere along this bottom part of the text, then it's basically be rotating around that line. And so we can make sure that the bottom of this text layer is matching with the top of the second text layer. So the way I can change this origin point is by adding another transform, which is called origin. And here the origin point can be positioned with the X and Y value. Right now it's 50%, 50%. It basically means that, let's just imagine like a square, and within this square we have like a little point. Right now it's centered. This means we go 50% to the right on the x-axis and then 50% down on the y-axis. This is how we get this 50%, 50% value right here. Now we want to put this point right here. So let's think about how we can achieve that. We will have to go 50% on the x-axis to the right and then 100% to the very bottom on the y-axis. So if we go to this property now and set those values, so x 50%, y 100, you can see that, yeah, the origin point is now positioned right here. And if I like start rotating this around, you can see that indeed the bottom of that text layer is kind of like the center line or the origin point of this rotation, and we are rotating it around that point. So you can set it to -90, and then we're gonna be done with the top text layer. So now we kind of have to do the same thing with the bottom text layer. So step 3, let's add a transform, rotate 3D, and then we are going to rotate it along the x-axis -90. And then we have to tweak the origin point again here. However, it's not going to be on the bottom of the text layer like it was on the top version here. It is going to be on the top of the text layer. As you can see, this is where that origin point is going to run, so we can transform it around that line. So to achieve that, we can again take a look at our little illustration. We have to move this little square right here only 50% along the x-axis to the right, and then the y-axis shouldn't move anywhere. It should stay on 0% right here. So let's just quickly delete these and then come back to step 3. And then the origin point will be 50% x and the y will be 0%. So now we have created the little staircase, and now it's just a matter of fine-tuning the steps frames rotation. So maybe I want to have a little bit less x rotation and then a little bit more y. I can also play with the z to get it like this. And yeah, I think it looks pretty decent. It looks like a little staircase here. So now all we have left to do is to jump onto the next section and set up sticky positioning. So when we scroll down this site, this whole setup right here, it's not even scrolling. So yeah, let's do that sticky positioning setup really quickly. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wrap these steps into another frame. Option Command and Enter. You probably already know this shortcut. And I'm gonna rename this to sticky, because this is going to be the frame that we're gonna eventually set to sticky positioning. But for now, let's just set it to relative or leave it on relative. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wrap this sticky frame inside of another frame. And I'm gonna explain it really quickly why I do it, because it might be a little bit confusing now that you are just wrapping these layers into new and new stacks. I know it's a little bit weird, but in a framer, we gotta, create new frames all the time. So you better get used to this thing. So sticky, again, Option Command and Enter, another stack has been created here, and I'm gonna name this scroll container. And now I'm gonna explain why I did it. Basically, if we set a frame to sticky positioning, let's say this sticky will actually be sticky, so let's set it to sticky here. So now this will stick to the top of the viewport as we scroll down the site until we reach the end of its parent frame. So now the length of this scroll container will basically determine the length of this sticky effect, because the longer it is, the longer it will take to get to the bottom of it, and the longer the sticky position frame within will actually stay sticky. So let's quickly explore how this looks. First of all, I have to fix one more thing. The main stack right here is set to 100 VH. We have to set it to fit content, and then it is going to now fit the scroll container within, and that is when I can actually set this to a larger size, so the scrolling will be a little bit longer, maybe 2000 pixels. And then I also want to make sure that this sticky frame within is not in the center, because then we are not going to really see it when we land on the site. So let's set the scroll container's layout settings to distribute start and vertical positioning. And now it's going to be on the top perfectly. And yeah, but we can see that still we set the sticky frame to sticky, but it's not really sticky. Why is it not sticky? Well, it's really good that you're here, because if you would have just tried it yourself in Framer, you probably wouldn't really figure out why it is not working, because it doesn't really say anywhere inside of the app, I guess. Sticky positioning only works if we set all of its parent frames, so all of the parent frames of the sticky position frame, to overflow visible. So let's take a look at this. Here the sticky, this is the sticky position frame, it has a parent which is called scroll container. It also has a parent, it's called main, and it also has a parent which is the desktop breakpoint itself. So I'm selecting all of them, and in the right panel we click overflow and set those, or set it to visible. So if I preview this right now and I start scrolling down, you can see that this is no longer scrolling. It is pretty good. Sticky is working. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually create like a little frame right here that I'm going to place within the main. So we just have this extra section below the scroll container, so we can see what it looks like when we like start scrolling further and this sticky positioned frame is no longer sticky when we reach the end of the scroll container. So let's remove this fill color. This is going to be just a spacer at the end. And let's start scrolling right now. I'm scrolling, and once I reach the end of the scroll container, it's gonna start scrolling away. But it seems like this thing right here is not long enough, this spacer, or something is not right here. Let's just try to do it this way. And yeah, now you can see that when we reach the end of the scroll container, this just starts scrolling away. We can also give the scroll container a fill color just to show it a little bit better, so we can see when it, when we reach the end of it. So scroll. And as you can see, as this bottom line of the scroll container reaches the bottom line of this container here, which is used for wrapping these text layers, this staircase starts scrolling away. However, there is a little issue here. It doesn't really look cool because it starts at the very top. So what is the trick that we can do to make sure that it is centered basically all the time, no matter what viewport size we have? As you can see, I can make this a little bit smaller. It's gonna still stay in the center. I can do whatever I want. It's gonna be centered. So what we usually do with these sticky position setups is we set this sticky frame to 100 VH. So height, viewport, and 100 VH. So now what this means is that this height will always take up 100% of the given viewport. So if you are looking at this website on a smaller phone, it's gonna be, a little bit smaller. If you're looking at this on a huge TV screen, then it's gonna be much larger. And so if you think about it, the sticky setup makes it stick to the top of the viewport because this value here is set to 0. So it's gonna fully go to the top of the site. And then the height of the section will be 100 VH. So it will just take up the available space in our viewport. So as you can see, as I start scrolling down here, it is staying in the view because of the sticky positioning setup. And it is also taking up 100% of the given viewport. And within that, this staircase is centered. So it's going to always stay in the center. And then when we reach the end of the scroll container, you can see that the staircase will nicely scroll away. So now we can actually remove the color of this scroll container because it doesn't really look good. And now we have this. So you could be asking that, Nandi, why are we making this sticky positioning setup? How is this going to help us in creating the actual scroll animation? Why is this good for us? Well, let's explore that in the next section. The really, really great thing about sticky positioning is that we can keep elements within our viewport while other elements, for example, if I place a frame right here within the scroll container, and I place maybe another one right here, and then I just duplicate these, you're gonna see that they are actually scrolling away. Only the sticky positioned frame will be sticky, and everything else that is right below it, inside of the scroll container, is just gonna scroll away. And we can use these little frames that are scrolling away to trigger different scroll transforms and animate certain parts of our sticky position setup. And so we get a nice little effect. So what we're gonna do right here, as we're scrolling down on this website and we are keeping this in the viewport, we will start animating these text layers within these steps to the right. We are going to be transforming them along the x-axis, all of them, and they will be just moving across this whole thing, creating this illusion of the staircase effect. So let's just take a quick look at this. You can see that all of these are moving. So right here in the center, it's moving to the top, but actually on this top text layer, it's also moving to the top. It looks like as if it's moving to the left because of the parent frame of these text layers is actually a little bit rotated to the left. As you remember, we rotated along the x-axis, and that's why it seems like it's like moving to the left. I'm going to show you to you how you can do this scroll transform. First of all, let's just add the scroll transform effect to these text layers. So I'm going to open up these steps, and I'm going to select all of these text layers. Then on the right panel, I'm going to go to Effects, Scroll Transform, and then let's just not care about the trigger for now. We're going to sort it out a little bit later. And then on the from state, we can specify the from state of the animation. So we have a starting state and then an end state. And as we scroll, it's going to transform from the from state to the to state. Of course, the from state is, you can see it's one opacity, one scale. We don't change anything right here. So we can set one opacity and one scale. And then on the to state, as you can see, if I start moving this X offset, it's not gonna look great. So maybe I was a little bit dumb when I said that it's gonna be transformed along the X offset, but no, it is going to be moved along the Y axis. So as you can see, as I start moving this, we get this crazy effect. So I'm just gonna transform it until we reach the end of these text layers. And yeah, I think it's gonna end somewhere around here. Yeah, it looks pretty good. Maybe we can move it a little bit more, but no, I think this is gonna be fine like this. Yeah, basically that's it. Now we successfully set up the from state and the to state. Now all we have to care about is the trigger, and let's just click the transition so the whole animation will be smooth and all. So trigger, it's on scroll at the moment. Let's take a look at how this looks. I start scrolling down, and it seems like I have a really good effect. It looks nice, but it's not really what we want. Basically what on scroll means is that this transformation will be happening from the top of the page to the bottom of the page. So for example, if we select this desktop breakpoint and from fit we set it to a really large size, so 10,000 pixels, now our website is really large. So this scroll will play out on a larger area, meaning that it will be much slower. So if you take a look at this, I'm scrolling and I already reached the end of the scroll container and we haven't really moved that much. And if we have a little bit smaller, maybe 1000, so you can see that this is going to be a more sensitive effect. But what I want to tell you right here is that on scroll, it's not really working for us when we are using sticky positioning, because if we add a new content to our website, the website is going to get a little bit bigger. So the intensity of the scroll effect will change and it will play out differently. So we have to find a different way to trigger the effect. So if you think about it, the thing that we want is that along this area, along the scroll container, let's just add that color back. We want this animation to play out in this area, in this scroll area, because this is the scroll area that covers the stickiness of the frame. So as we reach the end of it, we don't want to, transform it anymore, because the stickiness has ended. It's no longer sticky, so we don't need any animation. Let's make sure that this scroll animation plays out along the area of the scroll container frame. How can we do that? Well, we can go to the right panel and we can create a unique ID for this section by going to the scroll section and setting it right here. We can just name it maybe scroll trigger. And then if we go back to these scroll transform effects on these text layers, let's just select all of them. On the right, I'm going to select this, and then here, the trigger is now on scroll, but we can switch it to section in view. And now here I'm going to see all the sections that I created for this web page. As you remember, just a couple of seconds ago, I created a scroll section for the scroll container. So now I can select this as a trigger. So now, if we take a look at this, this is going to play out along the area of the scroll container. So as I reach the end of it and the staircase moves away, the animation also stops. Pretty good. This is exactly what we wanted. And now, of course, we can also remove the background color. And yeah, it's gonna look really, really nice. I just remembered one more thing, that right here we had a little bit different color for the rest of the text layers. So let's just select the last 3 text layers on each of them. and set them to this blue color. So now it's gonna look something like this. Pretty good. Right now, I just want to tell you a little tip. I know that this video is probably pretty helpful for you so far if you're still watching it, but let me show you another video that I think you will enjoy really much. If you go to Framer.University and lessons, you can go to browse all, and if you scroll down, I have a video called Animate Like a Pro. I mean, it's not called Animate Like a Pro, it's just here in the thumbnail. It's called The Only Video That You Need to Learn Framer Scroll Animations. It's a really similar video to this one, but I go into a little bit more detail about how you can use these scroll sections and trigger frames in a little bit more advanced way. So if you want to learn more about this topic, make sure to go ahead and watch this video as well, because then you're definitely gonna become like a real Framer expert who can literally create any animation. So yeah, that's what I wanted to tell right here. And let's just end this video by optimizing this for tablet and mobile. Well, this is a pretty like complex setup right here. If we change, for example, the text size, let's say on this phone, let's see what happens, because I actually don't know, but I just have a feeling that nothing good will happen. Let's just select all of these. And on the right, let's select the size and decrease it. And yeah, you can see that since on some places we have fixed height, some of the parts of the setup will not adapt to the different size that we have on this text. It's just gonna no longer work. For this, there's a really great trick that we can use, which is called the transform scale. So we can actually scale elements down on our website really easily in Framer. We just have to select, for example here, the steps, which is basically the main wrapper of this effect. And we can just add a scale and scale it down a little bit, and it's basically optimized. We can do the same here on phone and just add a scale and then scale it down like this. Yeah, and we're basically done. So if you have like a similar setup that is a little bit more complex, you can use the scale effect to scale it down. And yeah, I think that's it for this video. I do really hope that you were able to learn some things about 3D transforms, sticky positioning, and these scroll transforms. If you want to, take your skills even further, you can watch, for example, my 3D transforms crash course that I have here on my YouTube channel. I'm going to leave the link in the description. And yeah, also make sure to check out Framer.University, because I have a bunch of like components, resources, and yeah, different cool stuff that you can just remix and play around with. So yeah, I think it's a pretty good resource if you are learning Framer. And yeah, I have also like more lessons right there where you can, literally learn Framer for free. Again, thanks for watching this video. Make sure to leave a comment below. Let me know if you liked it or if you have any more questions. And yeah, I'm gonna see you in the next one.